Hello there! Welcome back, boys and girls, to Void Dwarf Studios. And we're going back into the Stormcast where we shall look at their characters. Now that I've done the Nighthaunt ones, at least. Again, this will be non-named characters, so I'll save them for their own video. But these are the heroes that you can have to lead your Stormcast in battle. And starting off, we have the Knight Questor. A Knight Questor is, well, he's your questing knight of a sort, charged by the God King Sigmar to undertake perilous quests in an effort to find lost artifacts, kill particularly dangerous foes, and, he's the fetch quest guy. He goes off and does things that the God King decides needs fetching. Although they have the rank of an officer, like they can lead armies, their primary goal is as, well, champion fighters. They will fight the biggest monsters, the most evil baddies. It is their job to single them out and kill them in combat. Armed with a Sigmarite shield and warblade, these guys are pretty tough. With an armor save value of 3, 5 wounds and a bravery of 8, he's not going anywhere. 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, -1 rend. He's already got a pretty solid profile for a character. And in addition to this, he has an ability called Heroic Challenge. If he's within 6 inches of an enemy hero, when you choose him to fight in the combat phase, he can pile in 6 inches instead of 3, so long as he ends up within an inch of that hero. And in addition, he gets to reroll failed hits. He already rerolls his saves thanks to his Sigmarite shield, and with his special Thunder Charge strike, he adds 1 to damage whenever he wounds on a 6, which is pretty damn solid. This guy is a pretty solid character killer, and heck, he's not even that bad at killing hordes. Obviously he can only kill a max of 4 at a time, but still, with a 3+ save, he's gonna stick around for a little while. I wouldn't necessarily pick him to lead your army in bigger games, but for a smaller one, the Knight Questor is a very solid choice. However, if you prefer your knights to have a more magical leaning, then you may prefer the Knight Incantor. This is a Stormcaller who can summon down lightning, hurricanes and mystical energies that can be used to, well, blast your foes to smithereens. This is the rank below the Lord Arcanum, so these guys and gals typically live within the Sacrosanct Chamber, and they often lead their brotherhoods in battle. Armed with an Incantor staff, they can send bolts of lightning raging towards their enemies, and they carry fantastic scrolls that you can use to have additional effects. And, as a last-ditch effort, they can use their spirit flasks as essentially a thunderbolt explosion around them. It's essentially a screw you all, I'm taking you with me move. And again, a very solid profile. Bravery of 9 this time, 3+ save, 5 wounds, pretty damn good. 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, -1, but these ones do D3 damage, so not half bad at all. It can cast 1 spell every hero phase, but it has a particular one that's just for it called the Spirit Storm. Cast on a 7, and if successful, each enemy unit within 18 inches suffers a mortal wound. And on top of that, in your next hero phase, you -1 from the enemy's run and charge rolls whilst they remain within 18 inches of the Knight Incantor. Your scroll, known as the Void Storm Scroll, is a 1 per battle use. And basically what it does, you can just use it as a free unbinding spell ability. So yeah, these are pretty handy if you're expecting to come across any magical opponents. And as I mentioned earlier, they have a Spirit Flask. So what happens is, once per battle, at the start of the combat phase, you can say that this model will shatter 1, 2 or 3 Spirit Flasks. When you do this, each unit within 3 inches of this model suffers a mortal wound for each Spirit Flask you shatter, and units within 3 inches with 10 or more models take D3 instead. This does do mortal wounds to yourself, so it's very much a thing you do as a last resort. You might be able to get away with using 1 and surviving, but I wouldn't recommend it. Again, a very solid character choice, and one that's not half bad in close combat either. And now for something completely different. Well, with a more musical nature at the very least. The Knight Heraldor. Usually an officer assigned to the Strike Chamber by a Lord Celestant. The Knight Heraldor, with his blasting trumpeting calls, bolsters nearby allies, and tends to be where the thickest the fighting is. The booming sound coming out of his trumpet is so fierce that it can even be turned to destructive purposes, the notes themselves bursting forth like a thunderclap and announcing triumphant returns of the armies from the realm of heaven. Such is the power of these blasts that trees can fall down, buildings can shake and fall apart, and yeah, you just don't want to be near this guy. It's like having a rock concert directly inserted into your ears. So yeah, don't try and steal his trumpet, he won't like that. And annoyingly, he also has a fairly solid stat. Not quite as good an armor save as our previous knights, but 4+ save, 8 bravery, 5 wounds, still pretty good, and with 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 4s, -1, he's not bad. Not as good as our previous knights, but still not bad. But it's his rules that make him quite interesting. Onwards to Glory, one of his abilities. In his hero phase, you blast a signal from your trumpet and you pick a Stormcast unit that's within 10 inches. That unit can charge this turn, even if it retreated in the previous movement phase. So yeah, this guy basically means that if for whatever reason your Stormcast will falter and you need to get them back in the fight quick, then well, this guy will make sure they turn right back around and get back stuck in. And in the shooting phase, he can use his trumpet with the ability Thunderblast. What happens is, you pick a terrain feature within 15 inches, roll a dice, and each unit within that many inches from that terrain piece take d3 mortal wounds. So, not very useful if you're playing on a plain table with no terrain, but if there is any terrain feature nearby, that's not too bad. That's just another way to turn defensive terrain against your opponent, because it is any terrain. So if you're fighting Sylvaneth or Chaos, and they have fortification or woodland, that terrain piece can fall apart and, cause d3 wounds. Literally, their castle becomes their weakness. God, and you can have multiples of these. If you have a couple heralders just blasting at this terrain piece and causing mortal wounds to the army, that's really irritating. That's an irritating way to go. I wouldn't stick him close to any combats, just because of his save, and his broadsword's okay, but it's not nearly as good as the previous knights. I would just have him within that 10 inches, blasting away and making sure that Stormcast don't run. And that is really what he's there for. And next up you have your Knight Vexillor, your battle standard bearer. He's the guy who carries the pole for the particular storm host he is from. And you get 2 kinds, one the meteoric standard and the other the Pennant of the Stormbringer. The meteoric standard basically being able to pull comets from the stars and throw them at people, it's as ridiculous as it sounds, or the Pennant of the Stormbringer being able to transport Stormcast units across the battlefield. And he's not unarmed, don't worry, he does carry a Warhammer just in case. These banners are really Sigmar's way of proclaiming his hatred for chaos, and his intent to reconquer the mortal realms. And yeah, these standards are focal points for celestial energy, which is how they're able to channel the effects and make magical stuff happen. A Vexillor is definitely someone you don't want directly involved in the frontline fighting, and definitely someone you want close enough to get the benefits from. He's a battle standard bearer. Like in every other army in history, the battle standard bearer is there to not get into combat, but there to lead and inspire others around them. It's amazing how much a piece of cloth and a flagpole can inspire people. It really is. And he's not going to run away. I guess that standard makes him feel pretty brave too. Only the bravest of Stormcast knights get to carry one of these, and that's very much reflected in his profile. 9 bravery, 3+ armor save and 5 wounds, and his Warhammer isn't too bad either. 4 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s, no rend but 1 damage. Again, don't get him stuck in the middle of combat, but if you want just a little extra attack, it's probably worth just poking him in. And the basic ability you get with both standards is the Icon of War ability, meaning he allows all Stormcast units within 12 inches to re-roll their charges, which is fantastic. It's better to have that little extra insurance to make sure you don't screw up your charge phase, and in addition you get a once per battle effect from either the Meteoric Standard or the Pennant of the Stormbringer. The Meteoric Standard is a once per battle effect, which basically means you pick a point on the battlefield 24 inches from this model, and you roll 2 dice, adding the total together. Each unit that come under that many inches from the point you picked suffer d3 mortal wounds. And remember, you can have multiples of these, so yeah, that's another really irritating way to cause extra mortal wounds. God, Heralds and Vexillors doing mortal wounds before you even get close to the enemy? Ugh. 10 inches. Ranged combat in Age of Sigmar is relatively short-ranged anyway, on the whole. But yeah, still, that's a really horrible ability. And Pennant of the Stormbringer isn't that bad a choice either. What you do is, you pick a Stormcast unit in your army and you take it off the board. Then you can place it 3 inches away from any enemy model. They can't move in that phase, but you've managed to move a unit out of dodge, for example. It's a good way to use it. In addition to this, you roll a dice for each enemy model within 6 inches of the unit you've just moved. On a 4+, it's blasted by a gale of force and does d3 mortal wounds. So you can use this thing really in 2 ways. You can either use it to get a unit out of dodge if you feel like it's about to get smushed, or you can use it to transport a unit close to the enemy and then they get blasted with more mortal wounds. So yeah, either is a pretty solid choice. And either way, you get to reroll your charges so long as he's within 12 inches of a Stormcast unit. So yeah, pretty solid choice. I would consider bringing one of these. Hard to say personally which one I prefer. I've seen the Meteoric Standard used a lot, but I kind of like the flexibility the Pennant of the Stormbringer gives. Yeah, we'll have to see when I actually finish making my Stormcast army. But Michael, I hear you cry. What about some more frontline fighters? Let's get back into the close combat. Oh well, okay, if we must. The next best unit to show this would be the Knight Azuros. A winged angel if ever there was one. A herald of the Stormhost's arrival, these avenging angels fly down from the heavens and they smash into the enemy lines. Known as Sigmar's Spear Tip, they will always appear as the first ones into battle, although they will often be ambassadors and scouts, leading members from both strike and auxiliary chambers into battle, and, well, diplomatic negotiations, in the case of the ambassador role. Gifted with beautiful star blades and able to carve their way through even the hardiest of foes, it isn't their sword that makes them so powerful though. The celestial beacon they carry, the lantern, has magical properties. It radiates a searing light that damages any who are not Stormcast, blinding and tormenting those, particularly those who worship the dark gods, and it gives boons and bonuses to allies of Sigmar, who can see through this divine light and move through it easily. And Knight Azuros is a brilliant choice, frankly, and a fantastic unit to get stuck into the battle straight off. 5 wounds, 3+ save, bravery 9, it can fly, which is always awesome, and the Starblade isn't half bad. 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, -1 rend and 1 damage. Not half bad, but its abilities again that make it really shine. Leader of the Way, one of the first abilities it has. Stormcast Eternal units in your army that use the Lightning Strike ability to be transported to the battlefield, aka when they come in from reserve, can be set up within 5 inches of a Knight Azuros, even if this would mean they're within 9 inches of the enemy. So yeah, this guy means that you can get your units closer to the enemy faster and not have to pay the usual penalties from deep striking from reserve. So that's a pretty amazing ability. Followed by Illuminator of the Lost. In the shooting phase, you get to re-roll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made against enemy units that are within 10 inches of a Knight Azuros. So what this means is, your artillery, or archers that are at a distance, can get bonuses if this guy's nearby your enemy units. Re-rolling 1s is always handy. The Light of Sigmar is the final one, and it's a once per battle ability that you use during the hero phase. You declare that this model will unleash the light of the celestial beacon, the lantern thingy we were talking about earlier, and if you do so, it cannot move, charge or pile in. However, each enemy unit within 8 inches of this model suffer D3 mortal wounds and are blinded and driven from the battlefield. If you're Chaos, it does D6. So whilst it doesn't actually make units run away, it does do a lot of mortal wounds, particularly if you have the unfortunate chance of having the Chaos keyword. So yeah, against Chaos, this thing rocks. Against everything else, it's not half bad. And it's no slouch in close combat. None of our previous characters we've mentioned have yet got a command ability, these are all abilities, but still, a very worthy character to have in your roster, and one that I would personally love to get at some point. But then again, I just love flying units. It just reminds me of my RAF Pegasus Bretonnian army. Yeah, good times. However, if you fancy something with a little bit more range to your arsenal, but you still want to keep the cool angel wings, you want the other variation of this knight, the Knight Venator, a winged archer who rains arrows from above, able to soar into any position he or she likes, I should say, and just snipe vital targets. Doesn't matter whether you're a small necromancer or a giant monster, this winged avenger will find you and will shoot you down. And he gets to have a little pet, a star eagle. It's a living creature, but it has celestial energy as part of its makeup, as it were, so it's even able to harm ghosts. Yes, this is a bird that can attack ghosts with its talons and its beak. So your Venator. It's a pretty interesting unit actually. It's definitely more for character sniping as opposed to getting into close combat fast like our Knight Azuros that we previously mentioned. But here's the stats for you. 9 bravery, 3+ save, 5 wounds, it can fly up to 12 inches, which, you know, great, same as the Azuros. Instead of the close combat sword that the other variant has, the eagle is your close combat weapon. 3 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s and 1 damage, no rend. So yeah, already, it's not really something you want to get into close combat too much, if at all, if you can possibly help it. Although, the Talons on a 6 do have -3 rend, so long as you're not fighting Nighthaunt, this is actually quite a nice little ability. But yeah, keep this guy back. It's his missile weapons that are really what you want. 30 inches for both his Realm Hunter bow and the Star Eagle's talons, who I guess just dives at enemies 30 inches away and rakes them with the talons. The 30 inches is quite the range. Not many weapons in Age of Sigmar have a range of this far. Most of them are between 18 and 20 inches, at most. So yeah, the Realm Hunter bow has 3 attacks, hitting on 2s, already off to a great start, wounding on 3s, not half bad, -1 rend and 1 damage. And the Eagle has the same attack profile for its melee weapon as it does for its missile, so 3 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s, potential -3 rend and 1 damage. But once per battle, the Venator has an interesting little ability. He has what is called a Star-Fated Arrow. Once per battle in the shooting phase, you can declare this model will loose the Star-Fated Arrow. When you do so, he makes 1 attack rather than 3. But it does cause D3 plus 3 damage, and if the target is a hero or monster, it does D6 plus 3. So once per battle, you get an almost auto kill shot. Most heroes have wounds of between 4 and 5. If you get an average roll and get, D6, roll a 3, plus 3, you're going to kill most heroes right off the bat. But it is a once per game feature, so be careful how you use it, and preferably put someone near him who could maybe give him a chance to re-roll, for example, just to make that attack more likely to go off. But yeah, this is a pretty interesting choice. I might take one of these. I personally prefer his more close combat variant because he's more useful all the time, and whilst the bow is pretty damn good, with a -1 rend and the ability to shoot at 30 inches, which is handy, the once per battle ability to me it's okay. It might be great in a situation or in a clutch, so long as you've got a reroll nearby, but yeah, I wouldn't want to rely on it too much, because it's sort of a 1 chance per game thing. But yeah, the model's really cool, and I dig the little bird. It's always nice to have extra options for your flying units. And I do love the winged units in the Stormcast army. It's probably my favourite part of the Stormhost, honestly. And now we leave our knights behind, and we start looking at the Lords of the Stormhosts. These are the guys and gals who will really lead Stormhosts into battle. Whilst the knights can lead small detachments, it is really the lords who are the top bosses. And we're going to start out with the Lord Veritant, with his wonderful lantern, that enormous lantern. A purger of corruption, a seeker of justice, and an antithesis to chaos. They are used to uncover sources of treason, mercilessly eradicate any forms of chaos, and remove cults and secret societies within the Free Guild cities. Almost your Inquisitor of the Stormhost, as it were. They use their giant lanterns to reveal the dark influences of the Chaos Gods found within the people who hide among society, and he then can declare the God King's judgment and will hack them down without even a second thought. If you have them in battle, they tend to be accompanied by their Judicators, who share in their ability to reveal hidden sources of corruption. They will often be accompanied by Gryph-hounds, who help them in their duties, and this will be an assignment passed on by their Lord Castellant. The lantern, known as the Lantern of Abjuration, shines with a blessed light that harms all those with chaotic natures or intentions. These are the guys who have caused a little bit of trouble in the Free Guild cities, as they just kind of wander in, find sources of chaos, and then butcher them before telling anyone what's going on, leading to all kinds of rumours and, whispers of the God King Sigmar, being a little bit unfair, no right to a trial or anything, just straight up kill them dead. But there is no denying that they are extremely effective at what they do. With a pretty decent stat line, 6 wounds now, Bravery 9, 3+ save, and with their Judgment Blade, that lovely little sword he carries, 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, -1 rend, and 2 damage. Also, your Lord Veritant can be accompanied by a faithful Gryph-hound, which you get to call, who can be set up within 9 inches of him. This guy is a priest, basically, your priest inquisitor of your Stormhost armies. Not a leader yet, he is still considered high in authority, but he doesn't possess a command ability. With his Lantern of Abjuration, he can unbind a spell very much like a wizard once every turn, and with his Sanction ability, he can beseech Sigmar to help him cast down energies from heaven. Basically, in your hero phase, you pick one enemy wizard, unfortunate bugger, within 7 inches. On a 4+, that poor wizard suffers D3 mortal wounds. So he's a great wizard killer, we already know that now. He can not only stop a spell a turn for free, but he can also on a 4+ just continuously cause mortal wounds. And it gets better. Bound in Surface means that the Gryph-hound that helps him track down spellcasters across the world gives him the ability to add 3 to the unbinding roll for this model's Lantern of Abjuration, which means that normally a spell has to be cancelled by matching the opponent's spell value, but instead you can, even if you roll badly, so long as you've got 3 less than your opponent and your Gryph-hound is still alive and within 6 inches of the enemy wizard, then you can still stop the spell. So these guys are basically spell blockers. And yeah, they're great wizard killers and hunters, and with 2 damage apiece in using their Judgment Blade, they're not half bad in close combat either. The other variant of this model that you can get is known as a Lord Castellant, the master of defensive warfare, who also, coincidentally, is often accompanied by a Gryph-hound. It is this lord's job to ensure the defences of the Stormhost strongholds are properly maintained, and that the spirits of his comrades are encouraged during grim and difficult times. He's a little bit like a chaplain in that respect, essentially making sure that the Stormhost remains strong and committed and, keeps their spirits up. And, his ability to cleave skulls with his weapon doesn't hurt either. And the Gryph-hound is accompanying them to make sure that anyone who attempts to sabotage or infiltrate the castle is going to have a rather rough time of it. And if someone is unfortunate enough to be spotted by this guy, that halberd of his is going to make things very, very uncomfortable for you, as he inserts it kindly and gently wherever your imagination takes you from the end of that sentence. A very similar profile to our Lord Veritant, 9 bravery, 3+ armor save, 6 wounds, but his Castellant halberd gives him 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, -1 rend to damage, and it gets better. The lantern thing that he's been carrying means that during the hero phase he can unleash it. If he does so, you pick a Chaos unit or a Stormcast unit that is within 12 inches. If it is a Chaos unit, it is struck by the searing light of the lantern and suffers a mortal wound. If it's a Chaos Demon, it takes D3. If a Stormcast Eternal unit is selected, this lantern in fact heals them, and you get to add 1 to your saving throws for that unit. On top of that, in the next hero phase, each time you make a save roll of 7 or more for that unit, 1 model in the unit heals a wound. So what this basically means is that your Lord Castellant is there to bolster your units. He hangs out with them and he makes sure that they don't get into too much trouble. And he's a great defensive character because he can heal your units and give them that extra ability to save. And he's great versus demons and cultists. Nothing's getting past this guy. And I'm just going to quickly mention his lovely little Gryph-hound, as the Veritant and the Castellant get access to this cute little Griffin doggy. And the Griffin profile is, well, it's okay. He has 3 wounds, 6 bravery, no armor save, but let's be honest, he was never going to get one, and he moves 9 inches, not half bad. He has 2 attacks, hitting on 3s and wounding on 4s, with 1 damage, nothing amazing there, but still not terrible. But it's his abilities that help him out. Loyal Companion. A Gryph-hound makes 4 attacks with its beak and claws rather than 2, so long as it's within 3 inches of its Lord Castellant or Lord Veritant. Very nice, very handy. Darting attacks. After this unit attacks in the combat phase, you roll the dice and move each model in the unit up to that many inches, which means you get to basically move the Gryph-hound wherever you want in the combat. Warning Cry. If an enemy unit is set up within 10 inches of this model, you roll 2 dice. Any unit within that many inches of the Gryph-hound is alerted to the enemy's presence, and can attack with one of its weapons as though it were a shooting phase. So if anyone tries to sneak up on you whilst this Gryph-hound is around, your archers, your Judicators for example, will basically just turn around, open fire and cause all kinds of problems for the person that just turned up. So if you think you could sneak up on these things, yeah, you got another thing coming. Which one do I prefer these 2? I mean, I am a lover of halberds. That is an awesome looking halberd. But the Veritant is a fantastic wizard killer. So yeah, hard choice. I like the Castellan because of its ability to heal and to give you that extra saves, but I think I would probably go with a Veritant, just because it's nice to kill enemy wizards and just make sure they don't get in your way all the time. And now for something a bit grimmer. The Lord Relector. These guys are your healers, guardians of the souls of the Stormcast, and are responsible for making sure that when the soul of a Stormcast goes into the underworld, instead of staying there, it goes back to the Soul Forge, ready to be remade into the Stormcast body. Rather sinister looking chap, these are not your average Stormcast. They are priests who are able to channel the power of Sigmar and call down powerful storms of lightning or the ability to heal Stormcast around them. These priests originate from the realm of death and appear to have powers that allow them to snatch souls away from Nagash. This is undoubtedly some kind of secret that Sigmar was able to wriggle out of Nagash at some point back in the Age of Myth, which allows him to basically stop souls from going to Nagash, which irritates the Necromancer to no end. And their profile matches their fairly grim looking image. Bravery 9, 3+ armor, 5 wounds, and with a relic hammer, which is got 5 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, -1, and 1 damage. Not half bad. In your hero phase, you can use an ability called Lightning Storm. Essentially, your Relector calls down a storm, and any enemy unit within 12 inches of the model has to roll a dice. On a 3 or more, the unit you picked takes D3 mortal wounds, and your opponent must subtract 1 from all hit rolls until the next hero phase. The other end of this ability is known as the Healing Storm, in which your Relector picks a friendly Stormcast unit within 12 inches and you roll a dice. On 3 or more, you heal D3 wounds, and you can only use 1 of these a turn. This is kind of your more, it's a bit like a battle standard bearer, except this guy is actually much safer to be stuck in the thick of the fighting compared to your Lord Vexilor. The Relector is perfectly capable of dishing out damage in combat and surviving thanks to its 3-up save, and on top of that the storm abilities don't matter if he's in combat or not, meaning he can just keep spamming D3 mortal wounds or he can keep healing D3 mortal wounds. I would definitely take one of these as it's a very, very useful little buff. And our next holy man is the Lord Exorcist. In life, this was a human who was able to perform miracles and rites of abjuration, typically speaking through either the belief in Sigmar or through sheer force of will. Once they've been remade into a Stormcast, they master this ability and channel celestial energy in order to banish demons and ghosts. Even Nagash finds these figures particularly annoying because they have an amazing ability to put down anything he tries to resurrect. And they're no slouches at banishing demons either. With a wave of their hands, they can crackle null energy that slams into their enemies and essentially puts them back in the ground. And they are no slouches when it comes to close combat with their staves. But their staves have an extra function. Known as redemption staves, they have a little compartment which, when open, draws souls in, and they weigh the soul inside of this and judge whether it's worthy or not. This means Lord Relectors can potentially create, or at least send, potentially worthy souls up to the Soul Forge. And yeah, it's no wonder that Nagash finds this irritating, because Nighthaunt, who might have proven to be decent Stormcast if given the chance, get nicked from him and then turned back into Stormcast, which then come back down and start hitting Nagash. So no wonder he finds these exorcists particularly irritating. And this applies to souls who have been corrupted by the chaotic powers. If they find there is a chance for redemption for them, then they can potentially be made into Stormcast as well. And the stat line is pretty decent for a Lord Exorcist. 9 bravery, 3+ save, 5 wounds, and the Redemptor stave has 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, -1 rend and D3 damage. Not bad at all. The casket, the little compartment on top I just mentioned, means that at the start of your shooting phase you get to roll a dice for every demon or Nighthaunt unit within 6 inches, and on a 4+, that unit takes a mortal wound. Yeah, that's already sucky. And this priest is not just your average priest, they are also a wizard, meaning that they can cast and unbind a spell a turn, and the particular spell they have access to is one called Purifying Blast, where the Lord Exorcist slams his staff into the ground and it unleashes a wave of energy that pushes back all spirits that are deemed unworthy. Casting value of 5, so relatively easy to cast. You roll a dice for each enemy unit within 6 inches of the caster. You add that unit's bravery characteristic to the roll, and if the result is less than 10, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. And you halve the bravery characteristic down if what you're hitting is death or a demon keyword. So yeah, these guys are amazing at killing demons and any undead that are nearby. You don't particularly want to be anywhere near these things, because your Lord Exorcist should be near or in close combat, where you can make use of that Purifying Blast and, well, yeah, making a poor zombie or skeleton or ghost's life absolute hell, and also making the Demons of Chaos really regret their life choices. And now, finally, we come to a lord who has a command ability. The Lord Ordinator, the warrior engineer for the storm hosts, who oversees construction of new cities' fortifications, such as the famous Storm Keeps. They are a combination of the arcane magic of Sigmar and science and engineering combined. Warrior engineers who work in tandem with Lord Castellance, the character we mentioned earlier on who helps guard and maintain fortifications, and with the help of the dispossessed, the dwarves, they help build these structures and make sure no one gets a hold of them. They are also stargazers and seers, able to predict through mathematics and science the future to a limited extent. They are dispersed among many of the armies of Order to ensure that each fortification is ready and up to snuff when Chaos or Nagash comes calling. Clad in their Sigmarite armour and wielding a rather prodigious hammer, they will hit you with just as much strength as your Stormcast warrior, and with just as much conviction. Your Lord Ordinator is very much a defensive general. Equipped with either an Astral Hammer or Astral Grand Hammer, you have one of two choices. The Astral Hammers, which is a pair of hammers in either hand, gives him 6 attacks, not half bad, hitting on 4s and wounding on 3s, and the Grand Hammer is 3 attacks, which hit on 3s, wounds on 3s, -1 damage, -1 rend and 2 damage. And his stat line is not too bad either. 4+ save, so not as good as the previous model we've just looked at, but still, 9 bravery and 5 wounds makes him more than worthwhile. His command ability, which is why we talk about him being the first true commander. Solemn Duty. In the commander phase, in the hero phase he can use this command ability at the start of a battle shock phase. You pick a friendly model using this command ability. You do not have to take any battleshock tests for Stormcast units within 18 inches. So basically, your Lord Ordinator, stick him in the middle of your army, activate your command ability, pick him, and everything within 18 inches just ignores battleshock. A very helpful ability, and a very useful defensive one. His Arcane Engineer means that he gets to add 1 to hit rolls for war machines within your army, any of them within 9 inches of him. Again, an extraordinarily useful ability, particularly if you're on the defensive and you've got war machines. And Comet Strike, which is something you use with your Astral Grand Hammer, means that on an unmodified hit roll of a 6, the attack inflicts 2 mortal wounds instead. Not half bad. Or if you take both the Astral Hammers, if an unmodified hit roll of 2 or more of your attacks against the same enemy is a 6, then you do D3 mortal wounds. So yeah, that means you've potentially done 6 mortal wounds to your enemy. That's really nice. I'm always a fan of giant hammers, but the Astral Hammers are definitely worth it in damage output. And your Lord Ordinator is no slouch in close combat thanks to this. I'd still keep him somewhere in the middle, slightly at the back, just because he's meant to be buffing the entire army. But yeah, a very solid command choice, particularly if you want to play on the defensive. But if you'd prefer something mounted and something a little bit more upfront and personal, we have the Lord Aquila. This lovely gentleman or lady leads the Vanguard Auxiliary Chambers of the Storm Hosts. They wage their war from the shadows for the God King Sigmar, and are usually the first ones into battle, fighting alongside the Strike Chambers as expert hunters, trackers and ambushers. They don't stand fast in the massive shield walls or have pitched battles. Those who are made into Lord Aquilas catch Sigmar's eye for their unfettered spirit and keen minds, for their ability to think on their own, be independent, and also to act accordingly to the best plans of the God King. They are used to fighting against hopeless odds, and causing destruction to any of those who try to stop Sigmar's coming. They are creative, they are strategic, they know how to trick and how to employ all resources at their disposal, and these experiences make them experts in skirmish and guerrilla warfare. And because they're given so much free reign, sometimes even the other lords don't know where these Lord Aquilas are, but they can count on them to be fearsome and to also be ready whenever they need them. They ride into battle upon their Griff chargers, moving faster sometimes than the eye can see, and using the winds of magic to propel themselves even quicker. And armed with their famous heavy Boltstorm pistol, in addition to this they couple it with a Stormbound blade or hand axe, they are fearsome combatants. In addition to this, they carry a fantastic compass known as the Astral Compasto, which allows them to find the best route to outflank and outmaneuver their enemy. Your Lord Aquila really is your scouty general, employed best alongside your vanguard. With 7 wounds, 9 bravery and a 3-up save, moving 12 inches thanks to his wonderful Griff Charger, he will be wherever you want him to be. His pistol packs a pretty good punch with 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s with 1 damage. No rend, but you know, it's the number of attacks he can do that's worthwhile. And with the hand axe and blade, there's not much difference. The rain one is just that if you have the blade, you get an extra attack with rend and 2 damage. If you take a hand axe, you basically get 2 attacks, wounding on the same as the sword, but only 1. So I'm not really sure why you'd take a hand axe if I'm honest. And the Griff Charger is a fantastic accompaniment to this, with 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, minus 2 rend and 1 damage. Not half bad at all. And we have another command ability, Lord of the Azurite Hurricane. What this means is you can remove your Lord Aquila and a friendly unit of Vanguard Hunters, Vanguard Paladors or Vanguard Raptors, or Ether Wings on top of that as well. You move them up to 24 inches on the battlefield and you can set them up within that distance. And you get to set them up as though they use the Astral Compass, which I will mention now, just for clarification. The Astral Compass allows you to do the following. Instead of setting up a Lord Aquila on the battlefield, you can place the model to one side and say that it's set up in pursuit. In any of your movement phases, you can summon the Lord Aquila and strike at the enemy's flanks. You can set up the Lord Aquila within 6 inches of any edge of the battlefield and 7 inches away from the enemy. This essentially counts for your movement phase. So what this means is you can basically remove this guy and place him wherever you want on the battlefield so long as it's on a table edge, which is not half bad. It means you can pop him or her around the battlefield really quickly every single turn if you really want to. And the last 2 rules are Ride of the Winds Etheric. In your movement phase, your Lord Aquila can choose to ride the winds instead of moving normally. If you do so, you choose the direction in which you will move, and then you roll 6 dice. The Lord Aquila can move up to a number of inches equal to the dice you've rolled in that direction, moving over terrain and models as if they weren't there, as long as he doesn't end his movement within 3 inches of an enemy model. And with Ethereal Strike, any hit rolls of a 6 with the Griff Charger's beaks and claws cause mortal wounds instead of the normal damage. So yeah, this guy is pretty damn good in close combat. The Griff Chargers mean that he can just fly around the battlefield willy-nilly wherever he likes, and with the ability to ride the winds, he can just move absurd distances. I mean, potentially he can move up to 24 inches across the battlefield. That's before he tries deep striking. And it doesn't say you can't charge, so using the Ride the Winds ability is just fantastic. You can just pop him wherever you like. And with the Lord of the Azurite Hurricane rule, you can bring some other models along for the ride, which is greatness gravy. That's a fantastic ability. Lord Arcanums are masters of using the celestial magics. Great throwers of lightning and thunderstorms. Their ability to use a power known as the Storm Sight means that they can even see into the living souls of others, throwing lightning bolts of such destructive power that they can vaporize their targets. In life, they were brave humans who were powerful wizards and witches, who risked their bodies and souls to defy the Chaos Gods with all the power they could resist with. And so, upon their death, and recognizing their great potential skill, they were remade in the Soulforge and came back as Lord Arcanums. All Lord Arcanums are leaders within the Sacrosanct chambers of their Stormhosts, although they can be called upon to assist in other Stormhost armies if requested. It is said that these are the manifestations of Prime Electrids, offshoots of the great bolts that had been used to level castles and slay god beasts. This is Sigmar's power truly manifested in magical form. Their command of the storm is so great that they can even capture the souls of slain Stormcast and vanish them back to the heavens so that they can be reborn once again. And with a very respectable stat line, to say the least. Bravery 9, 6 wounds, 3+ save, not half bad, and with 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, -1 rend and d3 damage. Not half bad. That's a fairly good stat line. But it's their abilities, of course. It is a wizard, or witch, after all. We'll start with their command ability, Etheric Manipulation. You get to use this command ability before any endless spell is moved, and if you do so, you pick a predatory endless spell within 12 inches of a friendly model with this command ability, and add d6 to the distance it can move. Now, for those who aren't sure, an endless spell, a predatory endless spell, is a spell you summon onto the battlefield in your magic phase, and it will move towards the nearest enemy model. That's why it's called a predatory endless spell. But the movement is often random, hard to control, or just a bit hit and miss. So with this ability to add an extra d6 to the move of your predatory endless spell, that means you can potentially be more likely to hit something. So that's not half bad, and his abilities just keep getting better. Cycle of the Storm. Once per turn, when a friendly Stormcast model is slain within 18 inches, instead of removing it, you can heal 1 wound. That could be handy, particularly if you have, say, a Lord Celestant on a dragon, for example. Then instead of this model being killed, you can potentially just say, nope, heals 1 wound and it's back on the table. That's potentially infuriating. That's a potentially infuriating ability. So I'd keep this guy close to your bigger, more powerful characters just so they can keep getting back up again. And his next ability is the Spirit Flask. We've mentioned this before for the Knight Incanter, and it works more or less the same. You choose whether you shatter 1 to 3 flasks, and each flask does d3 mortal wounds to everyone within 3 inches. Although it does these mortal wounds to the caster as well. So again, very much a thing you use as a last resort. Oh, and if you're thinking of using the Cycle of the Storm ability on himself, no. It specifically says in the last line, this model cannot use this ability on himself, so nice try. That would have been quite hilarious. And now on to what really makes this person unique, the magic. It counters a wizard, duh. It can cast 1 spell, which is a bit odd for a Lord Arcanum. I was expecting it to cast more than that, but let's see what it can do. It has 2 unique spell abilities. Thunderclap, casting value of 6, and if successful, you pick 1 enemy unit within 18 inches that's visible and subtract 1 from their hit rolls for attacks until their next hero phase. Not half bad. That's not a bad ability. And Prime Electrids. This is a bit more smashy-mashy. If this model successfully casts Arcane Bolt and it is not unbound, then the spell inflicts d3 mortal wounds instead of 1, or d6 instead of d3 if the casting roll was 10 or more. So what this means is your Arcane Bolt, which is a relatively minor magical attack, becomes far more damaging, especially if it's an unbound one. That's not that half bad an ability. It just means that your Arcane Bolt becomes way more powerful. So not half bad, but if you fancy something with a bit more punch and you want it to be able to move around quickly, then you are going to want 1 on top of a Gryph Charger, because what's better than having 1 on top of a Gryph Charger, right? We'll get to that. Don't worry, we'll get to that one. With 7 wounds now, and the ability to move up to 12 inches instead of 5, and with the addition of the Gryph Charger's razor, claws and beak, the Lord Arcanum on a Gryph Charger is just far more dangerous. A Lord Arcanum has slightly different abilities. Instead of your Thunderclap, you have everything else, but instead of your Thunderclap, you get Healing Light. It has a casting value of 5, and you target a friendly Stormcast model within 18 inches and heal d3 wounds. If your casting value was 8 or more, you heal d6. Not half bad. And its command ability is different too, Soul Energy, and it gives you the option to use it in your hero phase, shooting phase, or combat phase. In the hero phase, you pick a friendly unit of evocators, the dudes with the staves and magical powers, that can automatically cast Empower in that hero phase just like that. No casting needing to be done, they just automatically get it off. Not half bad. In the shooting phase, you target a friendly unit of Castigators within 6 inches. Their ability to Etheric Channeling, where they can increase either the accuracy or power of their bows, they, instead of getting to choose one or the other, both happen simultaneously. That's potentially horrifying. And last, the combat phase. Your Secutors, your frontline troops for your Sacrosanct Chamber, get to use Etheric Channeling for their weapons and their shields simultaneously. That is not that bad a trade-off whatsoever. And because of the ability to ride the winds etheric, because you're on that wonderful Gryph Charger, you can do that crazy movement where you roll 66 and just move that distance. So long as you don't end your move within 3 inches of an enemy model, this is potentially hilarious. Your Lord Arcanum can be literally wherever he wants, as quickly as you want. It is a potentially horrifying little ability you have there. So don't knock it. Do not take this lightly. That is a pretty amazing ability. But if that still isn't enough for you, if you fancy something a bit more, then well, the top tier magic user in your Stormcast army would be the Lord Arcanum on a Taurolon. On a Taurolon, sorry, it's strangely spelled. Giving you a whopping 10 wounds, 14 movement, 9 bravery and a 3+ save. You still have your Ether Staff, but the Taurolon has Horns and Stamping Hooves attacks, 3 of them, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, -1 rend, and 2 damage, not half bad. And of course, your command ability changes again to Swift of Wing. You use it at the beginning of your movement phase, and if you do, you pick a friendly model with this command ability, aka this, the Lord Arcanum, and add 2 to run rolls for friendly Stormcast units within 18 inches. Potentially useful if you're trying to get up the field quickly, and whilst it has that power, Prime Electrodes again, where you get to do the D6 mortal wounds, potentially with an Arcane Bolt, it has a different spell as well, known as the Lightning Orb. Casting value of 6, you pick a point on the battlefield, 12 inches of the caster, and you roll dice for each enemy unit within 3 inches of that point. And on a 4+, they take D3 mortal wounds. Not half bad at all. And of course, you've got your Spirit Flask, so you can do your suicide thing if you need to. You have your Cycle of the Storm, which means you get to heal that 1 wound once per turn to a Stormcast Eternal model near you. And because you're on such a massive flying beast, you get Meteoric Strike. Roll a dice for each enemy unit that's within 1 inches of this model, after this model makes a charge. On a 2+, they take a mortal wound. So that's a couple more mortal wounds there for you. So yeah, that's your best magical leader right now, and yeah, it's pretty damn powerful. I'm not entirely sure on the command ability. I think out of the 3 I prefer the Lord Arcanum on a Gryph-Charger, just because his Soul Energy ability just is more tactically useful, because it not only helps, because you can use it to help your other units, the Evocators, the Castigators and your Secutors. You've got more potential options. You have to pick one of them, but that's potentially very handy in a clutch roll, But finally, we have come to the last of our hero choices, and possibly by far the most powerful, the Lord Celestant. These are the commanders of a chamber of a storm host. Massive warriors, towering above all others, glistening in their Sigmarite armour, their faces hidden behind scowling Sigmarite masks, their tabards hanging from their belts covered in ancient scripts, wielding rune-crusted warhammers or Sigmarite rune blades, each one enchanted with the power of a falling comet, their hammers lion-headed in the image of Gal-Maraz, and their breastplates, cloaks and greaves showing their rank. This is it, boys and girls. Until we start getting to named characters, this is one of the best hero choices you can have to lead your army. 5 wounds, bravery of 9, 3+ save, and with a Sigmarite rune blade and rune hammer, the blade having 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, -1 rend and 1 damage, and the warhammer that has 2 attacks, hitting on 4s with 3, wounding on 3s and doing 1 damage. Oh boy. Yep, this is not that bad a profile at all. And his command ability reflects his furious status. Aptly named. The command ability, Furious Retribution, means that when you activate it in the combat phase, all friendly Stormcast units within 12 inches of you add 1 to their hit rolls. Not half bad at all, but it's his 2 abilities that just make it even better. Inescapable Vengeance. Add 1 to the attack characteristics of the model's melee weapons if this model made a charge move. So you now have 5 Runeblade attacks and 3 Warhammer attacks. Not bad at all. And his War Cloak, inscribed with various charms, and makes a lethal magical attack in and of itself. In your shooting phase, this model can make D6 storm magic strikes. For each strike, pick 1 enemy unit within 16 inches of this model that is visible to them and roll a dice, and on a 4+, they suffer a mortal wound. That is not half bad at all. And this is your foot variant. Next tier up, boys and girls, is by far my favourite, the Lord Celestant on a Dracoth. Dracoths. Baby dragons. That's how I like to view them. Oh, a lightning-spitting dragon with massive teeth and claws. Oh, love it. Wonderful. And you have multiple options to kit out your Lord Celestant. You can take either a Tempester Hammer, a Thunder Axe, a Lightning Hammer, or a Stormstrike Glaive. In addition, he can also take a Sigmarite Thunder Shield if he takes the Axe or Lightning Hammer. Let's start off with that wonderful profile. 7 wounds, bravery 9, 3+ save, 10-inch movement, not half bad at all, and depending on your weapon, depends on how devastating you want. My personal favourite is the Tempester Hammer because it's 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s, -1 rend, and each one does D3 wounds. Although your other options aren't half bad either. Your Thunder Axe has 3 attacks, hitting on 3s and wounding on 3s, with -1 rend and a flat 2 damage, or your Lightning Hammer, which is also 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, -1 rend, 2 damage. The Stormstrike Glaive is interesting because it is 1 extra attack, so you have 4, hitting on 3s, wounding on 4s, -1 rend and 1 damage, but, it's a trade-off. You get more attacks, or you have attacks that do more damage, but, not as many. And your Dracoth Teeth and Claws are 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, -1 rend and 1 damage, which just tops that little total up nicely. However, it's his command ability that is very, very nice. You use this in your hero phase, and when you use it, the Lord of the Host, used in your hero phase, you can choose to just not take Battleshock tests at all. Every Stormcast Eternal unit within 24 inches of this guy doesn't take Battleshock. That's very nice. It basically means your army isn't running anywhere until this guy goes down. So it's a wonderful ability, particularly if you think you're going to lose. It just means you'll stick in it a little longer, and you don't have to worry about casualties. So it's wonderful. And depending on what weapon you give him, depends on what abilities you have. So for example, your single-handed hammer, the lightning hammer, if you roll a hit roll for the lightning hammer, and it's a 6, the target immediately suffers 2 mortal wounds. And on top of that, the unit counts as stunned, which means it cannot make any attacks and cannot pile in. So that's potentially amazing because you've now stopped your enemy from being able to hit you back. So that is all kinds of hilarious. If you took a single-handed axe for your Thunder Axe, then instead what happens is you add 1 to the attacks of this model's Thunder Axe for each Stormcast Eternal unit within 5 inches of your army. So if this guy's surrounded by other dudes, the axe has more attacks for each Stormcast unit nearby. That's potentially very nice indeed. And the Glaive. If this model has made a charge move, the Stormstrike Glaive causes a flat 3 damage, then 1, and is -2 rend. So yeah, on the charge, that Glaive is horrendous. That Glaive is absolutely horrendous. But it gets even better. If you take the 2-handed hammer option, when this model makes a charge, it can make D3 extra attacks with the hammer. So yeah, that's pretty damn terrifying. And it doesn't end there. Intolerable Damage is the next ability, which means if the wound roll of the Dracoth's Teeth and Claws is a 6 or more, it causes D6 damage rather than 1. And then, just to add that little cherry on the top, your Dracoth Lion can breathe lightning. You can make a Storm Breath attack with this model in your shooting phase. When you do so, you pick a point on the battlefield that's within 12 inches, and you roll a dice for each unit, friend or foe, within 2 inches. On a 4 or more, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. So yeah, I suggest you use this ability well away from your other Stormcast, but yeah, just shoot it into the middle of a horde of marauders and watch that unit start feeling very unhappy. But if even that isn't enough, if you want something more grandiose, then a few, very, very few favoured Lord Celestants get to ride a Star Drake, a direct descendant of Dracothian, the galaxy-spanning dragon. These creatures are intelligent, eloquent, even able to speak in the language of elves, dwarves and men. Yeah, these are gorgeous beasts. They hunt chaos creatures for fun. They never eat them because their foul flesh is an anathema to them, but they are just amazing creatures. Even when they die, they are reincarnated in a new form in the realm of heaven. If you want to ride one of these, then you must be a part of the Drakesworn Temple, and on top of that be part of the Extremist Chamber, because only they have the honour of being able to ride one of these beasts, and you only get to ride one of these if the dragon allows you to, because these Star Drakes are intelligent. They have their own wishes, wants and desires, so don't you dare think that you can just hop on one of these. This is a mighty beast, and its stat line reflects it. 16 wounds, 9 bravery, a 3+ save, and when unwounded it has a 12-inch movement. You can arm your Stormcast Lord Celestant with either the Celestine Hammer, 3 attacks hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s, -1 rend and D3 damage, or a Stormbound Blade, 3 attacks hitting on 3s, wounding on 4s, -1 rend and 2 damage. But the Lord Celestant is just the passenger, the real damage comes from your dragon. 4 attacks with its claws, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, -1 Ren D3, and it also has the Cavernous Jaw ability. 3 attacks if unwounded. After this model piles in, but before it attacks, you pick an enemy model within 3 inches and roll a dice. If the result is greater than the model's wounds, it is swallowed whole and slain. So, if unwounded, you roll 3 dice, and if that total result is greater than the model's wounds, then just gone, just gone. So yeah, that's most characters just nom nom straight off the bat. Sweeping Tail means that once it has made all of its attacks in the combat phase, you roll a dice for each enemy unit within 3. If the result is less than the number of models in that unit, it takes D3 mortal wounds. I'd consider getting a Stormcast army just for this dragon. The model's gorgeous, but it just keeps getting better. You still have Inescapable Vengeance, so when you make a charge move, it makes D3 extra attacks with its hammer or blade. You can choose to take a Thunder Shield, so you can re-roll save rolls of 1, and if the save is successful, the shield unleashes a powerful blast that causes a mortal wound to an enemy unit within 3 inches. And yeah, your Stormbound Blade has an additional ability. If the result of any hit roll is a 6 or more, the target must make 3 wound rolls instead of 1. So if your enemy manages to pass 1, you make him roll it again. If he passes it again, you make him roll again. Yeah, that's really horrible. And of course, as it is a celestial dragon, it gets to shoot thunder and stars. Don't ask me how that works. Don't ask. It's just, dear God. So you get 2 choices. You pick an enemy unit and you roll a dice for each model within 18 inches of the Star Drake. For each result of 6, a bolt of lightning streaks out and the unit takes a mortal wound. And Rain of Stars means you roll a dice and choose that many enemy units on the battlefield. Then roll a dice for each one of these units. On a roll of 4+, that unit takes D3 mortal wounds. Yeah, this is depending on if you're surrounded or not, both of these abilities are really wonderful. And Arcane Lineage means that each time a casting roll is made for a wizard within 18 inches, the Star Drake can choose to increase that roll or decrease the result by 1. So if you're near a wizard that's your enemy, you get to screw him or her over, and if you're near a Stormcast wizard, you get to just increase it. Although, to be fair, it says wizard. It doesn't say Stormcast wizard, it just says wizard. So that could be a wizard from any ally army, so you increase their ability to cast too. But finally, we get the command ability, Lord of the Celestial Host. If a Lord Celestant uses this ability, all Star Drakes, Dracothian Guard, and Stormcast Eternal Heroes riding Dracoths re-roll failed wound rolls whenever their models attack with their claws, fangs, or great claws. So yeah, you take this general if you want to lead an army of Dracoths. So if you want to have an extremist chamber, you want a Lord Celestant on a Star Drake. This is just a wonderful, wonderful leader. More so if you want to lead Dracoths, but still a very powerful character. If you're taking just a standard chamber, I would suggest the Lord Celestant on a Dracoth. But if you're wanting to really hammer home the point, I would take the Lord Celestant on a Star Drake, because it makes a statement. You're going to have to dedicate something to take this thing down. And it's going to have to be pretty damn powerful, or just a really big cannon. So yeah, that is every Stormcast character with, well, non-named Stormcast character. That was a really long one. I never intended it to be that long, but there we are. At least this means I can actually make a video this long when I actually have the time. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed that. Which Lord do you prefer for your Stormcast hosts? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much all for watching. I see my subscribers gone up a little bit. That is awesome. Thank you so much to my new subscribers. I look forward to seeing you in the comments. And yeah, hopefully we will be talking again soon. Until then, take care everyone.